Hi, this is Polly with Get Busy Thriving. I'm here with Lou Ferreira, and I'm really excited to bring you this interview. Lou, thank you for sitting with me today and sharing with your viewers your knowledge.
My pleasure. Happy to be here.
Yeah, and so for those of you that don't know Lou, I've known Lou for a few years now. She's been my health and nutrition coach during this period, and what I want to explain to you all is this woman's amazing background. So she's been in the health and fitness industry for over 25 years. She's been a competitive athlete. Some of her stats, and I don't have all of them, but some of them are, she was in a women's national championship soccer player in college 4 times. She was on the U.S. women's national soccer team, and I mean, other amazing things. She's been a fitness coach for 25 years. And most recently, you've gotten into nutrition coaching. That's been the last 5 years, but that's your passion now. So what's the shift? What's the evolution for you? And for people who don't know what nutrition coaching is, what is it?
Yeah, the evolution was really interesting and kind of fun. Having been so focused on athletics and sports, my first go at training was really dealing with athletes, and then I started to venture more into the world of kind of the everyday person. And what I was realizing more and more was, as a trainer only, I wasn't really able to get in and help people in a way that was really giving them the changes they were looking for. I always felt there was a piece of the puzzle missing, and I knew it was nutrition. So I finally decided I'm just going to jump in. I'm going to go in, learn more, get educated, get certified, and get myself in a position where I could actually start working with people on that level.
Great. And so nutrition coaching, is this like diets, or is that what people would think about it, or what does nutrition coach do with people? How does that work?
Yeah, I mean, I think the first thought when you hear nutrition coach is, oh, this person's going to help me with my food. They're going to tell me what to eat and when to eat it and all that good stuff, which is definitely a part of it. We want to look at what people are eating and what foods can be working best for them. But above and beyond the food, we also have to look at everything else in their lives. I mean, there's the exercise part, but there's also work and home, relationships, finances, all that stuff.
That makes up them, right?
Yeah, exactly. And all of that plays a part in their long-term success.
Right.
So as a nutrition and health coach, I like to say, I like to work with all aspects.
Awesome. And that's really why we're collaborating. And I dig the future that we have, and this is not going to be the last time. So I'm looking forward to future ones, interviews and conversations and things that we're creating, because you know, while you work with the nutrition, like you saw with working with people with the fitness, like there's other elements, right?
Yeah.
And I see with the clients that I work with eating disorders or, you know, trouble around food, well, I can help them with the psychology. A lot of times it's like just the practicalness of coming up with plans, you know, like nutrition plans. So
Absolutely.
one of the important things that I emphasize with clients that I work with is you got to take that like diet mentality, that restricting mentality off the plate, just so you can, you know, work on your psychology. Do you find, you know, when people are stuck in restriction mode or diet mode, what are some suggestions that you have for them?
Yeah, I think the majority of my clients do tend to fall in the weight loss category, a larger percentage. And I think one of the first things is to get them to realize that it's not about restricting what they're eating. I have an interesting philosophy I work with called crowding out. So crowding out is this idea of, hey, let's turn the focus from restricting to what do I need to add into what I'm currently doing that I'm not already doing that will actually help bring some positive changes. And by focusing more on that adding principle, all of a sudden over time you start to realize that some of those things you were trying to restrict just disappear.
Right.
So for me, that's kind of a good approach I use with the restriction concept.
It just turns it upside down.
Yeah, totally.
It's not like restrict, you know, fewer calories, fewer. It's add in the good.
Yeah.
Oh, I love it. I love it. So I have some great questions, and I'm looking forward to your answers. And one of the things I want to share is, like, from my own experience, you know, I work with a lot of people with addiction, eating disorders, that sort of thing, and having had it myself for 20 years, bulimia for 20 years, you know, I find that people come to me sometimes and they have those off-limit foods that, like, do not eat, you know, no sugar, no flour, things like that. What do you find with the people that you work with? Do you recommend that? Like, oh, you shouldn't have, these are the off-limit foods, avoid these at all costs? Or does that, do you have a way that you work with them with that?
I think this comes down to each person individually and what their situation is. I think people who have a lot of emotional attachment to their food and are coming from kind of the eating disorder world, I think there is definitely that ability to not focus so much on what not to eat. And like I said, focusing on adding. But there is that fine line of, I think they have to understand that there are some things that will hold them back. And instead of throwing a bunch of things out, if we come up with the top 1 or 2 things that they can start with, like sugar being a big one, processed foods, those 2 things alone, which is really equals the same thing. If we can just focus on that to get started, and then someone can start to feel the results of that and start feeling better and coming around, then we can look at the possibility of other things that we might need to pull out for them down the road. But I think focusing in the beginning too much on restriction definitely can hold people back.
Yeah, there's just, sometimes I hear what people are working on or what they're working with, and they've cut themselves back so much that it's like, no wonder, and there's so much random information out there. Some of it good, some of it not so good, some of it dated, and, just confusing for people. So I think working with you, what it helped me anyway was, it's like, let's just focus on the good foods, like the food, and I don't mean good as in like good versus bad, but like the helpful foods. Like
helpful foods.
Adding those foods in. So speaking of like planning for things, so, over the years, as I've worked and studied eating disorders and addiction, there's a lot of different strategies for how you can go about the food, right? So some people have, this kind of mindset and that kind of mindset. Kind of comes down to about 2 different things that I see commonly. One is structured meal plans and say mindful or intuitive eating.
Right.
So, and mindful, intuitive, maybe you can share what you think about either one of those. What are those and what do you think about each one?
I think that there's a place for both. I think people who don't really have the knowledge about how they should be eating, I think it can be really beneficial and helpful in the beginning to look at some sort of structured way of eating. I don't believe as much in giving someone a set meal plan, meaning, hey, these are the exact foods you should be eating.
Like, here's your recipe 1, 2, 3.
Yeah, because I think people's tastes are different, and I think they have to get a feel for what they enjoy and what's going to work the best for them. But that being said, I still think we can have a structure to, hey, there should be a meal number 1 and a snack in there and a meal number 2, and you can break up your day and have some sort of structure to the day so that they have an idea of when they can fit certain foods in. And also structure works well around people who have busy lives.
Yes.
So someone who is either working out a lot, obviously has a family, kids, job, and they have to figure out how to fit their food in.
Right.
A structured plan of some sort can help with that.
Got it.
So that is where I think the place for structured eating comes in and structured planning. Now, intuitive eating, for me, comes down to getting people to become more in touch with their bodies and what their bodies need. And I think a lot of us just, I don't think have that deep enough connection because we do get so caught up in everyday life, which is moving very fast. But if we can stop and kind of listen to our cravings in a healthy way, and intuitively focusing on when we feel full, calming down and settling down enough to actually be able to listen to what our bodies are telling us. I think there are people who have a lot of deficiencies in certain things that their bodies are going to crave certain things to help with these deficiencies, but we have to kind of plug in enough to be able to realize that stuff.
Okay. So if someone were to come to you as their coach and let's say they think, hey, I think I want to try structured eating. So what would that look like? What's the approach that you would give to someone who says, I think I want to try structured eating? How would you start that relationship?
Well, we would start talking about what their life looks like, what their schedule looks like, what they're currently doing. I usually start my clients on doing some food journaling just to get an idea of what their rhythms and routines are like. And then from there, setting up a structure personalized for them that feels doable. Talking about, first of all, do we understand what a protein, a carb, and a healthy fat is? And educating them on that if they don't, and then understanding, hey, how much of these things do I need to have in my daily intake of food? And once they kind of have that knowledge through the structured plan, it helps them kind of ease into that intuitive eating. So I pretty much set them up on, hey, let's look at your morning, how that looks to be structured. We kind of set time frames on when they should be eating. What are their types of food options that fit into that category of your proteins, carbs, and healthy fats that you might have in the morning versus what you would have at lunch versus what you would have at dinner. Looking at, your breakfast and lunch, you're wanting to be really your 2 biggest meals of the day, as opposed to dinner being the smallest, and a lot of us are flip-flop of that. So structured plans will help kind of establish that a little bit better as well.
So get the calories where, they need it during the day.
Exactly.
Instead of sometimes we get so kind of wrapped up in just what we learned from our family or what our society or culture does, which is, big dinners. And some people, no breakfast. Walk out of the house with a cup of coffee and I'm good. And it's like,
very common,
right?
Very common.
And for the active lives that we have, whether we're sitting at a computer and we're typing and we're working all day, which is very mentally challenging, and your brain is one of the most, biggest consumers of energy. People don't realize, like, I need brain power. I need that food in that morning to activate it. So
yeah, I think we have to remember that our bodies are like a machine, or I like to use the analogy of a train engine, an engine of sorts. And if you don't fuel the engine, it's not going to work for you.
Right.
So it's really important that we fuel. And if you don't fuel, your body is kind of going to shut down on you. It's not going to be able to show up for you like it should. And our bodies are also really good at adapting, energy conserving. Yeah. And so the best way for our bodies to conserve energy is to kind of slow that metabolism down and hold on to things a little bit more, i.e. store the fat.
Like if, there's a thing these days that I'm hearing people about, the intermittent fasting, and trying that, and it's like, oh, gee, something else that we're looking at. Something that I hadn't thought about, but it just came up as you were saying that, is like time of day. And I'm going to introduce a word here that I wouldn't say that we want to latch onto, but sometimes with my clients, like, they feel they have, let's say, a witching hour. It's like that 2 o'clock or 5 o'clock, or some of them 8 o'clock at night, whatever, like that kind of the cravings start building up. Do you think some of that is they're just not getting enough nutrition maybe earlier in the day, or they haven't, structured it so that they're getting enough to kind of get them through into the evening, or...
Yeah, and I think most of the time that's exactly what it is. It is that whole thing with your body of blood sugar going up and down. Mm-hmm. And when we haven't given ourselves enough fuel through the day, and I think the common hour is that time in between lunch and dinner. Mm-hmm. We get home at that 3, 4, 5 o'clock hour and we're ravenous, starving, because we haven't eaten enough food during the day. So we start snacking on all the wrong things or eating that really large dinner. To satisfy. So yeah, I do believe that proper planning earlier in the day with your food intake makes a big difference later on. Now there is also that whole thing of habit. The habitual, like, after dinner treat that we did as kids, and it just kind of falls in.
Ice cream, finish your plate.
I have a 6-year-old, and we struggle with that with him. It's that, we just had dinner, and where's my after dinner treat?
Every day, or
So I think some of that just becomes mental and habitual, and we just have to do it differently. Try it differently.
A common story that I tell my clients. I had this myself, and it's not for everyone, but I had a chocolate addiction, I would call it. And so what I think happened for me, and as I tell clients this story, they go, oh yeah, I can see how that happened, is, if you go to a kid's birthday party when you're a young child, fun, games, playing, you have all this excitement, your nervous system is turned on, and you're like, great, 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 and they bring out chocolate cake, and they're like, woohoo, and you're like, chocolate cake, yay, party, fun, and then you go to another birthday party, and chocolate cake, and you keep getting the introduction of chocolate or something sweet at the moment of like a peak state, right?
Exactly.
And you go, and you just start creating those associations. Habits,
Yeah, it's amazing.
Yeah, so just noticing that, so just putting it out there, just be aware if you've got something linked up in your mind that it just is probably an old association, or you just sort of like, it happens all the time, and you just start to expect it. You start to expect it.
I will say one thing on the sugar craving, especially though, also that I have found with my clients. Oftentimes, sugar in particular, that craving later in the day can also be a sign of dehydration. So that people aren't drinking enough water during the day. So that's another one. Besides getting in enough calories, we have to make sure we're actually drinking enough water as well.
Thank you for pointing. Absolutely. So let's switch a little bit from the plan. So I have a note here to remind me that one of the greatest fears that my clients, that I hear commonly with people with eating disorders, addiction, is that fear of getting fat, right? And so, I coach people to suspend the disbelief that eating healthfully, and for some of them they are eating healthfully, but they still have this like manic binging episode that they're doing, and they're like, well, if I didn't have this, then I couldn't have these good foods that I love, and I'll get fat, and this fear of getting fat is just pervasive. And I work with them to say, in order to have, to retrain your brain to get out of the mentality of the addiction, you have to suspend the belief that you're going to get fat if you eat normally.
Right.
So do you find that when people eat normally, eat healthfully, eat like you're saying, they add in what their body actually needs? They gain weight? Is that?
No, I think, coming from that, again, society and the way we've been brought up is we were told if you want to lose weight, you eat less calories. If you don't want to gain weight, you eat less calories, which is completely not true. It's the opposite of that. But it does come down to the quality of what we're eating. So I like to talk about a thing called volumetrics with food, because I think when people understand that it's the quality of what they're eating and that all calories are not created equal. So if I have this 100-calorie donut and this 100-calorie apple, my body is going to handle those two things very differently. And one is going to cause us to store fat and put on fat. The other one is actually going to boost our metabolism and help us our metabolism run more like it should and feel better overall. The engine, exactly. So I think when we can get people to understand that if they eat more of the healthier foods, better quality foods, their bodies are actually going to feel better. And their metabolism is actually going to pick up and actually burn more fat as opposed to get fat.
You know, it's just old stories or things, you know, it's like, oh, it's like that plus and minus game that we think that we have to play, but it's really feed your body good nutrition, good calories, like you were talking about. You get, I mean, I feel like I have energy to burn. Just, you know, I'm sure you do too.
Absolutely.
When you eat well, it's like you just go, you know.
Yeah, and I think that whole adage, calories in versus calories out, and that just doesn't add up.
It's not right.
You know, just
it's not the same. Calories aren't the same, as you said. That's a perfect analogy. So thank you. So, so one of the important elements of shifting addiction behavior is working with the mindset and their thoughts. So I find that it's critical people become more self-aware so that they can shift old beliefs and patterns around food. You know, I've done some reading about brain chemistry and how brain chemistry affects, you know, people's ability to create those shifts, right? And what have you heard about the impact of brain functioning for people that maybe have some poor nutrition habits, they're restricting calories, they're not drinking enough water, you know, and taking in, and some of them they're taking in those massive amounts of sugar. How is that affecting their brain, you know, and like the sluggishness or?
Yeah, there's a lot to that, and the other thing I want to bring up on that as I talk through this too is the stress element as well, which adds to all that. But I think in terms of brain chemistry, what people don't really understand is something called healthy fat. And the word fat has gotten such a bad rap over the years. And a lot of people went through this big phase of eating fat-free, everything fat-free, and not really understanding the importance of healthy fat. And healthy fat is actually brain food. Our brain lives and needs that healthy fat to function well. So I think people who are on a really high processed food diet, high in sugar, they tend to experience a lot of issues of brain fog, of fatigue, obviously, not thinking clearly, being anxious, all those things, not being able to focus. There's kind of a multitude of symptoms that come from it, but it's also for kids, we find, really directly related to things like ADD, attention deficit, you know, not being able to focus on anything. So we find it a lot in kids who are eating a lot of sugar. But in adults, I think, you know, definitely that brain chemistry is greatly affected by what we eat, just like everything else. And I think our bodies get into this mode of protection as well, of really protecting us. Our bodies are amazing like that. And so not only our diets being poor, but high levels of stress as well. Our body will kind of get into a protection mode. And when we exist in that level of stress for so long, our body is not digesting and absorbing nutrients the way it should and dealing with the food that we eat, ideally. So it's something to really look at. And I think brain chemistry as well, I mean, it just leads to us constantly being in a state of stress. And so it's something I really like to work on a lot with my clients.
That just brings up so many questions. One of them, though, when you were helping me with my training needs with triathlons and adventure races, you know, what you brought up was, I mean, there was a couple things that were really helpful in terms of the fats. You know, I was definitely an avocado eater, so I love that. And then some other elements, but you pointed out the gut. You know, and it's like an unhealthy gut. And I think at the time you were like, I think you might have a leaky gut. And we worked on that, you know, and I went and got, you know, maybe you can talk about gut because there's more and more coming out about that. So what is an unhealthy gut, or how do you help people with a healthy one? Yeah, that's actually something that I think is one of the biggest things coming up for me now with my clients that I work with. And I think in general in the world of medicine, people are realizing more and more that this unhealthy gut is being
very related to most of our health issues out there right now. And basically understanding that the gut is sort of, it's an ecology down there. It's its own ecosystem. And they call it the microbiome, microbiomes that live there. And so when that gets out of balance, because there's a constant balance between the good and bad bacteria that are in your gut, and when that becomes very imbalanced by high sugar intake, high processed foods, those bad bacteria overtake the good bacteria, and it leads to a lot of different symptoms, from gas, bloating, other digestive issues, but it can also then turn into what's called leaky gut. And that starts basically with little perforations in the gut from undigested food and other things, and you're getting toxins that are actually leaking into the bloodstream. And so 80% of your immune system lies in your gut. So when we start dealing with those types of symptoms, then we start getting into people with autoimmune diseases and all this other stuff that's popping up. And essentially what it comes down to is we're getting over-inflammation happening in our body because our gut is out of whack. So sometimes people can also have trouble losing weight or even gaining weight when their gut is out of whack. And it's really a simple fix. I mean, it takes a while, but there are some really easy steps that you can take to actually get that gut back on track and heal it, which is the good news. So I do work with a lot of my clients in that area.
Let's tie that in, because one of the things for people watching this that they may have experienced or may have heard about or read about, and I see this with people who, let's say they made the decision, okay, I'm going to work with Lou and I'm going to get my life on track and I'm going to take charge of this and I'm going to start eating this plan, and they start to eat better, right? But then they get the bloating, right? And they're like, what's going on? What's this bloating, And so is that part of this?
Yeah, that can happen a lot. I mean, I think when your gut is out of whack and you're now trying to make that transition into eating better and leading a healthier lifestyle, there's still the healing process that has to happen. So in that healing process, when your gut is kind of off track, there are certain foods, when you eat them, when you start to eat them, even though they may be healthy foods, they can still cause issues. So I talk with people about adding in things like digestive enzymes in the beginning to help them digest their food better, to work with some of those symptoms that come up, and also just working with foods that obviously are a lot more anti-inflammatory in the beginning. So really focusing on that kind of cleaner diet that's going to help some of that bloating that comes up. And then over time, once that gut heals, a lot of these foods that tend to cause people issues can come back in moderation and not cause so much of a problem for people. So
So is this related to like people who have gluten intolerance?
Yes.
Okay.
Very much so, because gluten is one of those things that can cause great inflammation in the body. It can be, for some people, celiac disease, which is an extreme. Now that can actually be its own thing, and can be fatal for people. But then there can just be a gluten sensitivity. So that just means that when people eat gluten, it causes inflammation in their body. And it's kind of, there's gluten and gliadin, which are those two proteins found in wheat. And so if you know that you're sensitive to eating gluten, then you need to pull it out. Because if you don't, you're going to continue to deal with upset that gut and cause those symptoms. And again, for some people who are really gluten sensitive, once they do heal that gut, they can sometimes still eat some of that stuff in moderation and not have the problem.
And I just want to say for anyone watching this that, I haven't had an eating disorder for over 12 years, but I still have imbalances that come up, right? I'm sure you work with clients that just because they're not binging and purging or overeating a lot, but just natural imbalances that occur. So it occurs in all people, maybe in somebody who's been treating their body badly, with all the acids in their stomach. If they are purging, something like that, it can be really out of balance. So you might get kind of more bloating. But I can remember coming to see you, and some foods just weren't digesting for me properly. Like beans, I think was one of them. And I was like, well, beans I should just avoid for a little while. And that's where, working with you, we really looked at, day in and day out, what worked, how did it feel, how did you do, and then we just checked measurements and stuff, and just kind of stayed on top of it, so you see what's best for you. And
it's a journey, and every person's journey is very different, and I call it bio-individuality, because every person really is very different that sits in the chair with me. And I think that you have to be willing to step into the process a little bit, because sometimes for some people it can really take a while to figure out those foods that work and don't work. I think there are options of doing food sensitivity testing and stuff like that. They can be quite expensive, but that is one option to go as well. But I think it's best to just really get that confidence with working with yourself and really understanding, hey, when I eat this, I feel fantastic. When I eat this, I don't. And it really does give you that motivation and confidence to eat the right stuff that really does work the best for you.
And paying attention.
Yes, absolutely.
You know, it's not just, oh, this website said this, or this blogger said this, or somebody on TV says do this, and it works for everyone, because it doesn't.
It doesn't, absolutely.
Like, you know, everybody's systems are different. Their bio, what did you call it?
Microbiome.
Microbiome. Everybody's got a different microbiome. We have thousands of little bacteria in there that are just specific for us. And the amount of stress, like you talked about.
It does. It affects the gut. It affects all of that. Yeah.
Jeez. Okay. So some thoughts. So we talked about, you know, healing the gut, and there's great information I'm sure that you share on your website about that. What about just in general supplements and vitamins? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah. I think there's a lot of different thoughts out there. It's one of the biggest industries right now that's out there.
Probably billions.
Yeah,
right?
it's huge. So we're seeing it more and more. But I think there is that tendency to go too much to supplementing. And I think there can be definitely negative effects of over supplementing.
Okay.
So I'm an advocate of really trying to get most of what we need from our food first. I think number one source should be that food, the whole food eating. And then I think that supplements have a place. In particular, you know, if you're seeing your physician and you get a blood work done and something shows up deficient, I think that is a place where your physician can, you know, recommend, hey, I think you should supplement this. Like vitamin D is a common one.
I was just going to say, I had that show up for me a couple years ago.
It happens. People who are iron deficient, you know, dealing with anemia and that kind of thing. So it does have its place. But I do think a lot of people will turn to supplements when they're not really eating very well. And they think that, hey, if I just take the supplements, it's going to make up the difference between me not eating very well or taking good care of myself. So I think there's a fine line there. I have just some basic ones that I recommend to my clients, but it's something that I always tell my clients, hey, make sure and check with your doctor first and make sure that this stuff is okay for you. But I like to stick to the basics of a good food-based multivitamin. Probiotics, again, because of that gut health, is something I'm an advocate of in the digestive enzymes. Those are kind of common three, and probably some good omega-3s or something. And that's as simple as I really keep it, I think, in that area.
Yeah, because there's just so much noise out there about this.
A lot.
It's like, all right, enough, but if you're getting it from your food, and I know our foods today maybe aren't as nutrient rich as they used to be.
Correct.
So that's where it comes back to, well, how do you feel on it? You know, how do you feel eating that amount that day? Or for me, like eating beans, and it was like, it just wasn't working. I tried it a few different days and a few different types, and it was like, it wasn't working. So I said, okay, well, let me step away from that and try some other things.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, and I think, you know, those supplements I like to look at as, hey, they're great for filling in the gaps.
Yeah.
Filling in the gaps is what we're missing. And just a quick note on the confusion that you're talking about and all the noise out there. I mean, I think nutrition is probably one of the most confusing areas that we have these days, because there is so much conflicting information. And I do want to point out to people listening that it doesn't mean that a lot of that information is not valid, because I think that it is. There are a lot of really fantastic food theories and ways of eating out there, and we're learning more and more every day. I think the research in the nutrition area is kind of just the tip of the iceberg right now. I think there's so much more for us to learn. But the point of that is that people's bodies are very different, and what may work fantastically well for one person might work horribly wrong for the next. So I think a lot of it becomes, like, I call myself Switzerland, being a nutrition coach. I call myself Switzerland. I don't go for any one way of eating. I say, hey, sometimes it's about taking a little bit from a lot of different things and creating your own specific, what I call success formula for each person, to help them figure out what's going to really work best for them.
And I think working with a coach like you, you know, I can find that, you know, with all that confusion, we get disempowered.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's like, well, I don't know about this, or should I try that, or somebody's doing this, and look at what they're, you know, and it's like, and a coach can help you go, try this, see your success. You know, it's just like practicing your swing if you're trying to become a better golfer or something. Like, just see what works for you. Try it, and helps you build that confidence again around food. Because a lot of people that, you know, have addictions or overeating, they feel powerless, right? They're just like, I don't know what to eat, so I just give up. Or some of them, like, I think I got it, but, you know, I'm doing all this garbage eating over here, right? And if they can not restrict everything, you know, have a better understanding and relationship with food, and working with you, figure out what works for them, get their gut on track, you know, and feeling good. And, you know, I just want to end with that point is, I can't tell you how many stories of people that I see that start their path to recovery, and they get their food, dialed in, get it turned on. The energy, and I know you know this from people that you work with that are losing weight, that get off the processed foods, that get off the gravy train of like this, go down the middle aisles of a grocery store type thing. It's like, avoid those aisles, please. Like they start feeling better, the fog lifts, right?
It's amazing to watch that process happen for somebody. And I think as soon as they are able to start to feel better and have more clarity, like that's a common one I get, they're like, wow, I feel so much more clear. Once they start feeling that, it's a confidence builder, and it's a motivational tool, really. I think people become very motivated to, okay, if I can feel this good with these small changes, I want more, I want to do more, and it's their motivation to stay on track. Because for me, the biggest part is the sustainability piece.
Yes.
Anybody can be successful for a short amount of time, but how do we sustain?
Yeah.
And so sustainability is about finding the confidence, I think, and that comfortability with what works best for you.
Mm-hmm.
And it's about, for me, my whole business is based on balance. Mm-hmm. Hey, let's help people really find their balance, because we have to enjoy what we eat. We have to enjoy our lives. We know that. Yeah. It's not about being perfect. It never is. It's about finding a good balance that works for you.
Yeah. And with that confidence, I think about some people who, they just sort of throw up their hands. They're like, I just don't know what to do anymore. And they just go full on into giving up, right? And then Absolutely. They just, maybe they go down the road of eating too much. But then, at some point they go, well, this isn't how I'm supposed to live, right? And then they come back, and I hope with this video people are seeing that you can do this on a one-to-one level. Like work with someone that can help you figure it out just for you, and avoid the noise out there.
Yeah,
right?
Absolutely.
Tune into your body, as you're saying.
I think that's what I've become really passionate about, and one of my goals with what I'm doing in the world right now is to help people realize their potential. Mm-hmm. Every one of us can be successful. Every one of us can actually learn how to take care of ourselves really well. So once we're willing to go there, if you can find somebody like myself or like you to just help point out those areas that we need a little bit of work on, then you can get there. Yeah. Anybody can. Yeah. And so really that's what I'm most passionate about, helping people realize their potential.
Like they can do this.
They can do it. Yes.
So I don't mean to flip it on the upside down, but let's help people know, okay, what do you see as like the number one thing that keeps people from being successful? How do they most common kind of have a slip or a fall down, or feel like they want to give up? What's causing that? Like, is it structured eating's too hard, or I can't figure out intuitive eating, or what do you see as the most common thing that people who try to work on a new plan, what causes them to fail?
Well, I'd say top reasons why people really are very caught up in the pace of life right now. And things moving very quickly. And again, like I said before, especially for people who have families and jobs and they're trying to figure it all out. So I think time management, the biggest thing I hear people say is, well, I don't have time. I don't have time to eat this way. I don't have time to, plan and prep all this stuff. And I have to really talk them through, it's about better time management. It's about if you really stop and look at how much time you spend on your phone, watching TV, on your computer, social media. I mean, if we really stop and look at that, I think
you can get your minutes back, right?
You can get your minutes back, so that you can take that time at the end of the day to have your food, planned and prepped for the next day. Okay. So I think that's probably, I would say, the number one thing I have people complain about is time. Okay. And I think for me, the key to all of this really comes down to the planning and the prep more than anything. Mm-hmm. It is challenging to eat healthy. We have to get to the grocery store more. We have to get into the kitchen more. We have to really be willing to take the steps to be successful. Mm-hmm. And so that planning and prep becomes a really big part of it.
Got it. So to be successful, it's set yourself up for success.
Set yourself up for success.
And
exactly.
And decide, it reminds me, with the coaching that you do, with the fitness coaching, as a triathlete myself, I don't just say, oh, I'm just going to run a triathlon. It's like, well, I create a plan, right. I create an exercise plan, and I go, okay, these are the days that I need to do this exercise and that exercise and how much, and then it's a matter of, okay, that week I'm doing this much and that week I'm doing this much, and I don't just sort of leave it to happenstance, because, you get in those moments where if you hadn't planned your day, you're in between and you kind of just grab something, and that's when those sort of old habits show up or the panic mode.
The go-tos,
right?
yeah.
It's like,
Back to
stop at
those
7-Eleven and just grab.
Exactly.
Oh, goodness.
Yeah, and I think, again, one of the things I help people with is that we start looking at ways. I help them kind of try to come up with ways that they can plan better and prep better and look at their daily lives and, hey, let's break it down and see where could we find this extra time and what would be some ideas to help you figure that out. So that's a lot of what I do, is really helping people figure out how to create that plan that's going to work for them.
You know, and I don't know if this is available everywhere, but I think if you become more resourceful too, and I'm sure you, with working with all the clients that you've seen, you've probably gotten some ideas from your clients, like, oh, you know, there's this type of food that you can get, like a frozen vegetable,
Right.
That you can, you know, add into your morning shakes or something like that. It's like, hey, you can just have frozen vegetables in your fridge and you can pop that into the blender when you're making your morning shake or whatever.
Yeah,
you know?
absolutely.
Like, you've got those little insights.
Tricks.
Like for me, I was lucky enough to find in our area a health chef. Like,
Yeah.
she prepares food healthfully. I pick up her food every week, so it just takes a lot of the preparation and planning out for me. You know, I tell her my nutrition requirements and it gets taken care of. So I, you know, pay for that, but you know, it's either time or money you're
Correct.
looking at. But
Correct.
finding creative ways to take care of yourself, take care of those needs. So,
Correct.
awesome.
Correct. And I think also in clients coming to me who are thinking about working with me, some of the things I run into too as we talk about that, people will say, well, I don't think I can afford this. I don't think I can afford to do this. And I always tell people, hey, I think, can you afford not to?
I was just gonna, can you afford not to?
Can you afford not to?
What is it worth to you?
What is it worth to you? Yeah, and if look at, again, just like your time management, where are you spending your extra dollars? And if this is something that's really important to you, then I think you can figure out how to make it work. The thing is we have this one life. And especially if you have family, kids, and you want to be able to be the best version of yourself that you can be. You want to be able to live that life as healthily and vibrant as you can. We don't want to deal with health issues and all this stuff as we get older. And I think that is one of the biggest things to remember. And as you watch your parents or other people who have led unhealthy lifestyles and now what they're facing, that's a motivator. I don't want to end up like that.
Right.
So I think when you start thinking about things a little bit differently, your priorities change.
Yeah.
And you start to realize, I can't afford not to do this for myself.
You know, when I have clients that I work with and the money is a factor as well, it's like, well, how much money are you spending on the food that you're putting down the toilet? Or
well
that,
said.
You know, it's like, it's just priorities, you know, and it may be a shift in the priorities for a little while and then change your life forever.
Yeah.
Right? Like, what's that worth? So, so good. Any last thoughts? Anything that you just want to share that maybe we haven't talked about or something that came up that you want to leave people with that are thinking, you know, maybe a nutrition coach is my next step. Like, what do you want to tell them?
Well, I mean, I really want to put the message out there that, you know, our declining, I think, health overall that we've been looking at and our healthcare system, all of it, really, I think that health and nutrition coaching is kind of something that can really change people's lives. And I think that people need to understand that someone like myself can really help you get more in touch with yourself, can help you realize what you can actually accomplish in your life. And I really want people to know, I've seen so many different types of people walk through my door, and really anybody can do this. Anybody can heal, anybody can get to that better place, that healthier lifestyle and way of being. It's possible, it really is.
Regardless of age or weight or whatever, all of it.
Yeah.
All of it. And it doesn't have to be in person. You know, one of the beautiful things that this is allowing us to do is to share you with the world, you know, digital. Absolutely. So, you know, you can work with clients remotely. Some of the clients that I've sent to you and by referral, they're, you know, they don't live around us, you know, so, and that's the beauty of it. So you can get that help that you need from Lou or anyone just by reaching out and saying, like, I want to do this. And so Lou, thank you for sharing all this wisdom. It's been so fun interviewing you and just, you know, pulling out of you and sharing with people all that you've experienced and all that you bring to the table. So thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. It's been my pleasure to be here, honestly.
And I wanted to ask you, what is one insight that you can pull from this conversation? Just one thing that you got, the biggest thing that you can put into action today into your life. And I invite you to do it. Thank you for listening.